cash crisis worse in Venezuela once again systemic important thanks. They removed the one copy monitor. All right, we are here, and as always, looking forward to connecting and sharing my 2 cents on it's a very interesting subject matter. And I think this incoming presidential transition period is going to be very interesting, to say the least. And I think one of Donald Trump's dilemmas will be the dollar being too strong. And that's going to hinder his plans on accomplishing this great awakening or golden age or whatever he's referring to for our country, given that the global economy is suffering due to a overly strong dollar. So we're going to touch on that and a couple other things as well. But as always, want to welcome you to this stream, wherever you're watching at. Definitely feel free to leave some thoughts, ideas, suggestions in the comment section. We'll definitely love to share my 2 cents on it, as well as just get your take on things that you're keeping your eyes on. And as always, there's lots of noise to touch on. And in particular, this subject here is of importance to the global monetary side of things. But of course, to start the new year off, we've unfortunately had an incident or a couple of incidents, and just the mere threats of more circumstances in the form of the terrorist realm coming about, which is never a good thing. You know what time it is. So go on and thumb through the headlines, share with you the RTD news page, as well as check into some market activity. And of course, the goal is to give you some news, i.e. the good news, to start us off so that everyone spiritually can be charged up and hopefully encouraged today. And then we'll get into some of the noise, which is the relative stories that are things that are given to us that we tend to talk about after the fact, after they unfold. All right. Today is going to be interesting because we're going to keep an eye on the upward trajectory, the dollar index, the Dixie, and how, as of right now, due to it reaching a 24-month high or something like that, I'm going to talk about that. It's becoming a stranglehold for the rest of the economy, which ultimately hinders corporations here in America because manufacturers are competing against weaker currencies outside of our country, therefore making exporting goods abroad very unfriendly. It's going to be very interesting to see how this incoming administration can pull this off based upon all the promises that have been given. And that's one of the biggest things I think Donald Trump, spoke too big too soon, because it's going to take a lot to deliver a lot of the things he promised. And that's why I don't want to be a pessimist about this, but I find it very unlikely and very hard to accomplish all these things, especially in the first couple of months, year, give or take. But nevertheless, the end result of all this is going to be a continual reminder for you guys to hedge against all the promises that he put out there. And of course, the best way to do that from a monetary standpoint will be in precious metals. And that's just where everything will ultimately go back towards, because the debt is too much and the dollar is a problem. Okay, let's get into it. Let me give you some good news first. All right, so today, January 2nd, it is called Sacrificial Living. So this is just a daily devotional for those that are believers in Christ. And I want to definitely make sure I do a better job of and continue to encourage people by starting off with a devotional that I put together for you guys in hopes of you being able to take these words, chew on them, let it marinate in your spirit, man, and hopefully act upon these words. And more importantly, pass it forward. Be a blessing to somebody else today. Be of encouragement to somebody. Let your light shine in the world, ultimately, is what it's about. So real quick here, it says, whoever loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. That is from John 12, verse 25, 26. Then it goes on to say, Jesus is teaching us a kingdom principle, the power of sacrifice. To many, this sounds upside down. How can losing lead to winning? But in the kingdom of God, letting go of your attachment to the temporary opens the door to the eternal. This echoes the words of Isaiah, where it says, the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all, Isaiah 53:6. Jesus himself lived this truth when he gave his life on the cross, and now he calls us to follow him, not just in words, but in actions. It says true kingdom living means choosing purpose over comfort, service over self, and eternal treasures over earthly gain. I'm going to repeat that because that to me just stood out to me big time. True kingdom living means choosing purpose over comfort, service over self, and eternal truths over earthly gain. The reward is honor from the King of heaven. It says, are you ready to live a life of kingdom sacrifice? It's not about losing. It's about exchanging the lesser for the greater. Follow him today and watch his glory unfold in your life. Selah. All right, good people. That is the word for today. Hopefully, there was something in there that just got your spirit, man, fired up. Hopefully, the Holy Spirit can work with that and do something wonderful in you today. Let's keep it moving, man. As always, for those who are plugging in, never know who might be here for the first time. If you have not as of yet, hit that thumbs up button or or check mark or wherever you're watching this at, and drop a comment down below. As I mentioned before, let me know your thoughts, ideas, suggestions, what you're keeping an eye on, and we'll keep it moving forward. Let's get into real quick. I want to share with you some resources, just because I never know who might be new, and want to make sure I provide strategies and solutions to some of our monetary and financial problems. So, for those who might be new, you never know, but I got to make sure I have everybody covered. Let me get myself together here. On the screen here, we have colonialsmetalsgroup.com/RTD, my partners that are allowing people to take physical possession of their retirements in a form of a self-directed IRA. So, if it's new to you, I would encourage you, click the link in the description, go to this form, fill it out, download this little pamphlet here, get all the information you need in reference to this opportunity here. Give them a call from the number as well, and they can answer your questions. And if this is something of interest, I'd encourage you to consider it, just because it helps you diversify out of the conventional 60-40 split, which we know at some point in the near future will be very problematic. So, links in the description. Check it out if you guys are interested. Next, I want to make sure I remind people, for those who want to get involved in the silver game directly, this is your opportunity to do so. I'm excited about where silver is currently at. It's well below its all-time high. And I believe at some point when everything breaks and the truth is revealed, we're going to see it at 50 plus, and it's not going to stop. And you want to make sure you're in position to have accumulated or redeemed enough fiat so that you feel comfortable in protecting and preserving your financial future. That's what it's all about. So, for those who are interested, as you can see above me, here we got the silver team. This is an opportunity for you to actually be a part of the silver community where you can dollar cost average. And if you want to get into the silver business, you can have your own storefront similar to what you see right here. This could be yours where you can share with family and friends so they can get their weight up, and you can be rewarded for your efforts of helping people save. So if you're interested, join mysilverteam.com. Links in the description. And for those who are wanting to get a little sample, here's an opportunity to get a free 1 gram 𝗙𝗙𝗟𝗪 sent to you with some information, a little packet or whatnot. All you got to do is pay for shipping and handling, and you will be on your way to having some quote unquote free silver. So, once again, not too bad to have something just for checking out the opportunity. So, go to mysilverteam.com, links in the description. And then, last, for those who understand the importance of the most affordable gold on the market in the form of these gold backed notes here, you can get some on the far side from a half of a unit for $2.68 all the way to above me, a 10 unit for about $50 or so. And once again, it's just one way of many to protect and preserve utilizing true sound money, gold. And so if you guys are interested, just go to buygoldnotes.com or click the link in the description, and you'll be on your way to preserving everything you worked hard for. All right, good people, let's get into the news, man. I want to jump right into the news today. So I'm going to go right to the RTD page here. So as always, for all the information I'm going to touch on, it can be found at rtd.news, links in the description as well. And my goal is just to give you all the relevant news stories that's worth your attention today, put it on one single page so you can get access to it. So as you can see here, this is where you can find everything. Now, as I started off talking about, basically, Donald Trump has a major dilemma. He's wanting to make America great again. At the same time, the dollar has become a wrecking ball to the rest of the world because all fiat currencies, when measured against the current reserve currency, are underperforming severely. So therefore, it's causing a lot of nations to have to really begin rethinking how their economy is going to remain intact while they're being sabotaged by the reserve currency. So that puts a lot of pressure on them, foreign countries, as well as the Federal Reserve, because a strong dollar does not benefit any of the things that they're trying to accomplish when they want to keep that facade that everything is great. And it's going to make America very hard to recover growth-wise if our currency is strong. So Donald Trump needs a diminishing dollar in order to really spur growth at this current time. And we don't seem to have that. So what am I talking about here? Let me get into the story here. We zoom right in here. So as you can see here, I'll go to the second one first. Dollar hits the highest level in more than 2 years as the euro slides closer to parity. So once again, there's always ebbs and flows of the Dixie, which is just the exchange weight of all these dying fiat currencies, because I want to show you some on the graph itself. And all fiat currencies, when valued against gold, are underperforming severely. But when it comes to just the international monetary system, when the reserve currency is the dollar, this kind of matters in a sense. for trade's sake. But real quick, let's get into this article here. And I'm going to thumb through it, give you something to chew on, and we'll keep it moving. It says, dollar hits low level more than 2 years or whatever. So here's the dollar index as of now. And as you can see here, we're nowhere near where its former high was when it got up to 100 back in October 2022. Of course, this was during the time frame of all the QE. And of course, the United States led the world in quantitative easing or stimulus funds, which ultimately allowed all the foreign capital to make its way here. Therefore, people buying dollars, pushing the dollar higher. And as you can see, it got to that point there, but it cooled off a lot. And so here we are now, right behind my head here, and it's at 8 and climbing. And so the higher the Dixie goes, the lower the other fiat currencies go, therefore creating pressures for foreign nations. And so the idea of this article here is just centered around the euro. And so its primary focus is that the euro will equal parity, which is something that has happened once or twice over the last, decade or so. But once again, the U.S. reserve currency is predicated on it being somewhat favorable for other nations to be able to utilize so that it doesn't hinder their growth and their economy, because all this monetary confusion is all bent upon these currencies being something that other nations can actually utilize and not necessarily have to sell their own currencies to buy someone else's mess, i.e. the dollar. So this is just the visual aid here, but we're going to get into more. So let me show you what this actually looks like. On the screen here, let me put myself over here and I'll try to zoom out of this one here or zoom in more. But here we have the euro measured against the US. And so this is the last year. And as you can see here, it is down 6 point. And so from having peaked in August of this past year at 112, a 112 euro down for a dollar. Now it is at oh 02. And this is that concern of parity, which as an American going to Europe is great for us because things are slightly cheaper. But for Europeans coming to the US having to buy dollars, it's a little bit more of a burden, which means travel is something that others would consider. So Europeans usually, if they got to spend more during these tight economic times, they more than likely will cut back on traveling. Therefore, it impacts the traveling sector and all the other industries associated with travel. Therefore, businesses slow down, the economy slow down, more layoffs pick up. A lot of our economy forward movement is subject to the currency being able to remain somewhat on even fields. And when the dollar is strengthening, it favors us going there from a tourist standpoint, but not them coming here, which is a problem. But it's just not the euro, every currency. So if I went through this list here, it gave you so we have the British pound. British pounds over the last year is down 2.78. We have the Canadian dollar down 8.28%. Then we have, let me give you some more here. So literally every fiat currency, Australian dollar down 8.92 over the last year. But as we can see here, as of September, for the most part, on a majority of these currencies here, September, October, August was a turning point to where the dollar really began to strengthen and to where all these other fiat currencies are basically declining against the dollar. So we go to Japanese yen. We know where they stand at now. It peaked at 0.007. Now it's down to 0.006. So that's a small drop, but major given the Japanese issues they have. Then we got the Indian rupee. Over the last year, it's down 3%. As you can see here, it's problematic. Then we got the New Zealand dollar tanking. I can just go on and on, but I'm not. Swiss franc is another currency that's been relatively comparable in strength. It is down over 7.68 over the last year. So as you can see here, trend goes on. Russian ruble. Russia is our enemy, according to the powers that be, but the Russian ruble is down 20.51% over the last year. And everybody remember, I'm sure I talked about this during the whole, when the whole Russian-Ukraine kicked off officially, back during this time frame, the Russian ruble shot up and it was looking mighty strong compared to the dollar. But since then, things have changed, signaling that the Russian ruble is not the place that it once was when it was strengthening. So anyway, Chinese renminbi down 2.9. Okay, so you guys get my point there. So what we're witnessing right now is the dollar increase in value compared to those other fiat currencies. Therefore, a lot of those other nations now are forced to try to figure out how can they maneuver amongst the EU, enter into recession. Germany's in a full-blown recession, aka headed towards a depression, and the dollar or the United States isn't much better. We're not in much better position other than the fact that reserve currency, which is what has held all this together, happens to be the primary focal point. But it is not the head honcho of all currencies because the dollar, aka gold, is doing its thing. It is literally acting as a monetary medium of stability. And what do I mean by that? While all of those other currencies, let me give you this real quick. While all those other currencies are failing relative to the dollar, us or people, viewers of this channel here, especially if you're in the US and your national currency is AKA the Federal Reserve note or the dollar, while the rest of them have to make tough decisions on where they're going to run to for wealth preservation. If they're not running to actual tangible assets or gold or silver, more than likely from a financial standpoint, they happen to run to the dollar as a form of savings. But yet, where do we as Americans run when our currency eventually falls into the same fate as all these other currencies that I referenced when it's measured against something else? Everything is always measured against something greater in reference to all the monetary principles of wealth of store value, fungibility, and all those aspects of a sound money. And for us, the Federal Reserve note has been that medium because it's legal tender for us and it's the number one currency on the planet to this day. When I measure the dollar against something more reliable, something more long term, we get a much different viewpoint. So here is the dollar. Here is the dollar when measured against gold. So as of now, I showed you just a moment ago 1 year chart for all of those currencies when measured in the dollar or measured against the dollar. Now I'm measuring the dollar over here to the left against gold. And over the last year, the dollar, aka the Federal Reserve note, has underperformed severely when valued against gold to the tune of being down 22%. So that's a nice little jump there or decline there. If I can get rid of this, I don't know why this is here. Let me get rid of this. I don't know why. Why am I seeing all these other things here on the screen? I'm trying to give me a second. I don't know what this is about, but it's not moving. Anyway, as you guys can see here, the dollar when measured in gold is down 22%. So literally, as other nations are running to hold dollars for their savings, people who realize what's really at stake here, instead of running to dollars, you keep dollars has a place in your financial life because it's our legal tender. You need to spend, save, and invest with. But when it comes to long-term savings and wealth preservation, as you can see, it's underperforming severely against gold, and we haven't seen nothing yet. So this is just a 1 year. So if I can reverse this here. This is what it looks like when it's reversed. It just basically shows that, what is going on here? Let me refresh this real quick. I don't know why this is acting this way. Oops. Okay, so here we go. It should be better. Forgive me. So here we have, if a person a year ago would have taken a decent portion of their Federal Reserve note holdings that is just disposable income or currency you don't need, nothing that's really going to hurt you, maybe some savings or some emergency funds, and you took that and you acquired physical gold back in February when an ounce of gold was, as you see, I think I'm covering myself up here. Get over here. If we go back to February of this previous year, when gold got down to $1,900, you could have bought 1 ounce. And if you just went along for the ride over the last year, the gold you would have held on to that you acquired a year ago would have it appreciated 28% in purchasing power measured in Federal Reserve notes to the tune of what it is today at $2,655. And show you what that is. This is what it looks like as of now when I just look at this chart here. Even though we're not at that 2,700, which was the new all-time high, 2,750, whatever it is, then at 2,600 or so, you still would have appreciated in Federal Reserve note terms 28%. Just a little monetary note for those who realize that holding on to Federal Reserve notes for the long run only hurts those that hold them. It's just as all those other currencies that I mentioned before, holding those things when measured against the dollar is hurting them right now. Every fiat currency will have a day of reckoning, unfortunately. So what is all this about? Let me get into this story here. Give me a second. Let me get back to this page here. Okay, so the next thing is how the Fed and Trump could collide in 2025. So this is something that we're going to have to pay attention to because it's going to be hard for Trump to deliver on all these promises coming out the gate swinging, trying to make America great again, bit by bit, policy by policy. That's why I'm more than convinced that in order to really kick things off, to distract people from all the other issues, he's going to have to go the crypto route because that's where they want to steer people, because that'll also help with create new sectors of growth because of the price appreciation that would occur in that sector, therefore having a daisy chain effect in a variety of other sectors, making people feel wealthier. While in actuality, it's not real purchasing power. Your currency is not getting stronger. But real quick here, I think this is going to be crucial. So I want to touch on this real quick. So as you can see here, it says how the Fed and Trump could collide in 2025. Of course, they're going to come out jawboning. Donald Trump is going to come out swinging demanding a lot from the Federal Reserve to help him out. And what I mean by help him out, it's going to have everything to do with this strong dollar. He needs a much weaker dollar. So therefore, he's going to come out speaking and bashing Jay Powell. Is going to tell him that it's time to hang it up, or he's going to threaten him. But Jay Powell already mentioned that he's not leaving before his term is up, which is May or June of next year. So imagine if he actually stayed in his position and him and Trump went back and forth with all that. Of course, at the end of the day, it's political theater because they both know what's coming. For the sake of argument, it's going to be a mainstream topic that we're going to touch on, but just so you know. But here's some things worth touching on. It says Donald Trump and Federal Reserve Jay Powell have clashed before, and there's a chance they will clash again in 2025. Their collision could unfold in multiple ways. If Trump's economic policies cause more inflation, it could force the Fed to tap the brakes and pull back and expect interest rate cuts. That the new administration could make some new noise about limiting the Fed's independence, or Trump cost cutter Elon Musk who recently said that the central bank is absurdly overstated, could seek the overhaul of the Fed's workforce. So in that little spiel there, no matter what, something's going to need to be addressed because they won't be able to, make their cake, eat their cake, and serve up slices to the American public equally, to where there's going to be a lot of losers in this upcoming debacle that's going to unfold, because the Federal Reserve up until this point has always remained neutral, according to them. They just run monetary policy, and monetary policy in and of itself is inflationary because it's all based upon the expansion of the monetary base. And so what they're basically getting at is, in order to have the illusion of growth, Trump is going to need the monetary base to be expanded, i.e. more debt, i.e. banks lending freely to any and everybody, which would reflect in lower rates. And so the Fed funds rate right now is about 4.75%, I think, 4.5 to 4.75. Donald Trump, in order to even begin coming on air, talking about how great the economy is and telling people to look at their 401ks even more. As I mentioned before, he's going to tell people to look at their crypto wallets, but to have people feel comfortable, they're going to have to really cut rates, no doubt, from half of where they're at now. So we're looking at maybe 2% Fed funds rate, give or take, on top of the fact inflation or the CPI figures are trending upward still. So how will they pull that off? Only God knows ultimately, but we're going to see, because the Fed is not in control of anything. They're literally reacting to their so-called indicators or their data, even though their metrics are flawed. So it's just one big web of confusion. But I'm just forewarning you to the fact that Trump and Powell collision course will definitely be entertaining, because no matter what, everything hinges on the dollar being too strong. So they need a weaker dollar. What better way to weaken the dollar other than to cut rates? Therefore, cut them faster and lower than our other predecessors, the other central banks in Europe or whatnot, where it forces people to begin borrowing, spending, and getting people investing back in our country, which will be ultimately what he wants for his idea of growth. So these are just some things that I thought was worth touching on out of everything I just mentioned, and showing you all those charts of the Dixie, aka the dollar, when valued in other currencies. The currencies are trending down. Just be aware that at some point it will happen to the dollar, because Trump would prefer that instead of the Dixie being 108, he would probably prefer something closer to 1, if not lower, because that'll really help him kick things off with a very cheap dollar, because he would literally go on a spending binge as far as what he could actually do globally speaking. But as a dollar Dixie comes down, what will go up? Gold will go up, and hopefully silver. But of course, amongst all the things that they want us to focus on, you better believe Bitcoin is going to shoot up a lot higher. And Donald Trump would definitely own that as well. So that's just something worth paying attention to, I believe. Okay, so let's get to some more news real quick. Let me give you some other things. So when it comes to a strong dollar policy, just to give you some ideas as to how that will impact mainland here, I actually, for the sake of clarification, decided to ask a question here. It says, how does a stronger dollar hinder American exports? Because you can't have a great America if our businesses here can't send our products and services abroad. So here are some things that were brought up in this little excerpt here. It says a stronger dollar hinders American exports in several ways. One, higher prices for foreign buyers. Says when the dollar strengthens, American-made goods become more expensive for international customers, making them less competitive in the global market. For example, an American-made car that costs $30,000 would increase in price to 22,000 to 26,000.7 euros when the dollar strengthens against the euro. So literally, if you had a choice, if you're in Europe, if you had a choice between an American-made car at this current moment or a European-made car, the price tag of that U.S. car is going to be a lot higher in dollar terms than it would be the lower the local economy. So you're gonna pass on buying a U.S. made car and get the foreign boy. So that means less U.S. cars sold. Therefore, GM, Chrysler, the big three here in Detroit would probably have lower sales in Europe. Therefore, hitting their bottom line, leading them to need to cut manufacturing and cut labor, stuff like that in Europe outside of what they're already doing. So that's a problem. It says reduce export volume. It says the increased cost of American goods lead to a decrease in export volumes as foreign buyers may opt for cheaper alternatives to other countries. This can result in a widening trade deficit for the United States. Once again, a lower quantity of goods being sent abroad will force people to have to choose. And of course, you're going to automatically go with the cheaper stuff. So this right here, the idea of lower exported volumes of goods is ultimately the trade tariffs that Trump plans to impose on the world. So literally by adding additional costs onto importing goods here, it's going to put Americans in a position where, okay, so if something come over here and it's $2, $3, $4, $5 higher, you're going to look for an alternative or just go without that item unless it's something you absolutely want and can afford it. So it's going to force people here in America to have to decide, do I want to spend a couple dollars more for the same thing, or will I look for a substitute or just go without? So this is one of the side effects of tariffs as well. Next one here, it says impact on manufacturing sector. It says domestic manufacturers, particularly those relying on exports, face challenges due to reduced competitiveness in overseas markets. It says some companies may lose significant export sales, as exemplified by the Marlin steel wire products in Baltimore, which reportedly lost over 4 million in export sales due to a strong dollar. So companies that do business overseas, here and abroad, yeah, it's going to be a problem. And so international, multinational companies decrease revenue as well, reduce competitiveness in global value chains. Yeah, strong dollar has its pros and its cons. And right now, given the deficit that every nation is for the most part running and the debt bomb that's about to implode at the sovereign level, strong currencies aren't necessarily a good thing. But that's what happens when the world reserve currency has been positioned as numero uno and everything else is measured against it. There has to be winners and losers when you have that value, when you have that type of model. But then again, when all fiat currencies are measured against gold, as I just showed you, every fiat currency is underperforming, including the dollar, down 22% over the last year. Based upon all the shenanigans that Jerome Powell and Donald Trump are about to try to pull off, if you just were to guess, if I was just to guess, by this time next year, January 2026, I would be willing to say gold is probably going to be closer or well beyond $3,000. So if I'm partially right, looking ahead, it doesn't take a crystal ball to pretty much say, okay, you got all these dollars in a bank account, you got all these dollars sitting on the side, and when they're measured against something of global importance, you're going to lose purchasing power in the amount of ounces or grams or whatever it is that you would want to buy in gold. So it might be worthwhile to consider redeeming some of those Federal Reserve notes and getting some true, tried and sound, tested precious metals, just as a little bit of a bet against the Fed. Remember I said it? My motto for this year is to bet against the Fed and hedge against Donald Trump. And so once again, that's just my little philosophy there for myself. So anyway, that's that. Okay, what else I got here? Just a couple more those stories here. Things we're bringing to your attention. Here is a little excerpt from Daniel 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪, former guest that I've had on RTD before. But he put out a post here that got me thinking about, man, just how gold always somehow, some way should be in the conversation when we're talking about wealth preservation. Because when it's measured against sovereign debt or government bonds are under massively. So when I start off presenting options, and I mentioned about, the 60-40 split. Stocks right now are well beyond reality. So therefore, that 60-40 model is going to be problematic in the days ahead. Excuse me, if it isn't already for some. But when you look at gold and government bonds over the last couple of years, there's a key distinction in their performance. Gold doesn't perform, but everything ultimately goes back to be measured against gold. So here's just something here to bring your attention. It said gold versus government bonds. No government wants to give you a real economic return. So like the idea of I give you my currency, you give me something in return, so, i.e. whether it be gold on the free market or in the private or in the public space, you go support the government by buying a government bond. Typically, you want something back in return. But due to government bonds, for the most part, being underwater because of the interest rate we're in now, you're not really getting anything, but you're losing. It says here, inflationism is a policy, not a coincidence. So ultimately saying that inflating away the debt is the government's strategy. So holding and supporting the government by buying their bonds is your loss. And this chart here shows why that is. So as you can see, get myself out the way here. Going back to, let me click and make it bigger so you guys see what I see here. Okay, so as you can see behind me, over my shoulder right here. So going back right here, let me give you some time for this one. Going back to, I can't see myself. Going back, let me make some stuff here. Forgive me, let me get myself together. All right, just so I can see what I'm saying. Okay, so going back to this little dip right here. This is March of 2020. This is that 15 days of slow to spread. It was right here. 15 days of slow to spread. And everything on this side is everything since then. But look at the key differences. 15 of slow to spread, government bonds and gold were in the same ballpark. They were all, the white line is gold, the red line is the government bond index, and the blue line is the aggregated bond index. So that's real versus nominal. So as you can see, the white line, i.e. the gold, has been steadily trending up all the way to where it's well beyond the blue and the gold line over here. But the blue and red have come apart a little bit, where the blue is higher, which is the aggregate, and then the nominal, the government bonds index, is below. Point in case is gold has done everything that it's supposed to do in environments like this. Be an absorbent of all the liquidity that is afraid, that fearful flight. People get afraid of all this other stuff. They go to safety, which is safety. Gold has been safety for well beyond this modern era. And liabilities, the blue and the red line, are underperforming. As you can see here, let me zoom in. You can see, just let me give you some numbers according to these indexes here. If I come over here and zoom in more, so this is what it looked like. So the red line is the aggregate, is whatever, I forgot what it was. But as you can see, negative 15 is the performance of the bond index over the last 2 years, 4 years, 4 years and plus of this 15 days of slow to spread. Whereas in the gold index is climbing very high, and that's a very large gap there. So what does all that mean? Anything outside of gold has underperformed severely. So therefore, the government's at a tight spot here. No matter what Donald Trump attempts to do, no matter what Congress tries to do, it's going to fail because it's debt-based. And once again, if you're aware of that, hopefully you're not basing and monetizing and pricing your financial future in debt. And the story is gold and silver happen to be just the safest thing to hold just because they don't perform. Everything is measured against it. Those things perform. And they're doing very bad right now. And it's just the second day of the new year. Once again, more reason to get your weight up. Anyway, that's all she wrote for today, man. But once again, just trying to put together all these graphs and visual aids so people can see what's really going on. So this is all noise compared to what I mentioned at the very start of this, which is the good news. This noise here, we can't control that. You can't control what politicians do, what the mainstream media tells you, but you can't control your actions based upon your faith and what you do with that good news I gave you earlier. And so I want to encourage you to be of use to the kingdom. Go out, share, make disciples, scatter seed, and let the Holy Spirit do what it do best, which is to win over the hearts of man and draw them to Yeshua, because all this is taking us in one direction. We know how it's going to end. So in the meantime, enjoy, live, learn, laugh, and love on somebody today in the name of Jesus. All right, good people. Be blessed, be safe. Shalom.